Fox 2 presents Hancock and Kelley.
Good Sunday morning. Welcome to Hancock and Kelley on Fox 2, where we take on the top issues of the week. On the right, in for John Hancock is Amy Markscourts of KMOX Radio. Good morning, Amy.
Good morning, as Hancock would say. Top of the morning to you.
It's like he didn't leave, except there's more hair. On the left is Michael Kelley.
I would consider this the start of the most blissful Sunday ever, not having to spend it with John Hancock telling me I don't understand.
Everyone taking shots at the porch. On the agenda, a jolly good show at the Democratic National Convention in Chicago. How much of a bump will there be for Kamala Harris? And what does it tell us about the party's future in Missouri? A candidate for the U.S. Senate unveils what he calls the United Seats of America. He says watching the Cardinals side by side at Busch Stadium can help Republicans and Democrats douse political hostility. Robert Kennedy Jr. for president? No more. He's now on Team Trump, so what's in it for him? And our quote of the week is from the Missouri governor saying fellow Republican Jay Ashcroft's hurt feelings are hurting Missouri kids. Also, the road gets rockier for ballot measures on abortion rights and sports betting in Missouri, but we begin with the Democratic National Convention. We'll get to the presidential nominee, Kamala Harris, in a little bit. But right now, take a look at Missouri's moment in the spotlight during the state-by-state delegate roll call for Harris's nomination.
Kamala Harris is an enlightened bolt of energy and hope across this country, and we proudly cast 2 votes present and 68 votes for Kamala Harris and our Midwestern friend, Tim Walz.
I don't know if you could see everyone immediately surrounding the state party chairman, Russ Carnahan, but it was St. Louis Mayor Tishaura Jones, Congresswoman Cori Busch, and Kansas City Mayor Quinton Lucas, all big city progressives in what has become a very red Republican state. Michael, it wasn't all that long ago Missouri voters elected Democrats to statewide offices. Can they get back there with progressive leadership standing front and center?
Well, remember,
Cori Busch just lost.
These conventions are Democrats going up to select their delegates, and it would be obvious that the mayor of the city of St. Louis, a Democrat, and then Kansas City as well, would be there. Look, the Democratic Party's expanding from the cities out, but we are essentially divided in this state, rural versus urban. And I would hope that the Democratic Party will continue to spread into the suburbs and the exurbs. Donald Trump's helping us do that. But those are the elected officials of the Democratic Party.
How do you see this? What about the more, I don't know if you would call them traditional candidates? Crystal Quaid for governor, Lucas Kunce for the U.S. Senate, certainly not in the mold of Cori Busch and Tishaura Jones.
Right. Well, it wasn't exactly an accurate picture of maybe Democrats in the state of Missouri, at least not for Cori Busch. That's not the future of Missouri. I think you're going to have the faces that you want there to project an image. It's like social media. In that moment, you want the snapshot. You want to show people how you want them to perceive you, not necessarily how you are. Of course, in the cities, you're going to have that further left-leaning ideology. But again, for Cori Busch, that's not the future of Missouri.
Is Crystal Quaid the future?
Oh, absolutely.
Lucas Kunce the future?
Lucas
Is that
Kunce,
more where you see the party going?
They're definitely far more moderate than what you might see running in the city of St. Louis or in Kansas City. It's connecting with voters, and we're seeing the margins for Republicans in rural Missouri primarily staying solid, but in the suburbs, shrinking.
Can any of these people win against a Republican?
I know.
I mean, red?
I think we're that red right now. I don't see, Crystal Quaid, you talk to her, she's got her platform, she knows what she's about, but right now we're not the purple state that we used to be.
The ballot initiative to again legalize abortion in Missouri is headed to court, and it's a supporter, not an opponent, who has filed suit. Last week, Republican Secretary of State Jay Ashcroft said there were more than enough signatures turned in to certify the issue to appear before voters on the November ballot. He also released something called a fair ballot language statement to be posted at every polling place. Now, opponents say the language is a blatant attempt to confuse voters. It says in part that the measure will prohibit any criminal or civil recourse against anyone who hurts or kills a pregnant woman during an abortion. The plaintiffs want a judge to issue new fair ballot language for the measure, which would allow abortions up to nearly 6 months of pregnancy in Missouri. What's fair here, Amy? Fair ballot language.
Right. When what the judge is going to have to look at are two things. Is the language an accurate summary of what's proposed in the ballot? Is it accurate? Yes. Then he'll also have to look at, is it a fair summary? And in that summary, which it's the Secretary of State's prerogative to do so, he did pick out some of the more odious elements of the ballot language, or of the proposition, I should say. And so on that, I think the judge might rule that it's not fair, even though it is, in the first case, accurate. If he does rule that, it's going to have to be rewritten.
Do you think the language and Ashcroft are in the right here?
It's part politics. This is how people are going to want to get their agenda through. We saw this in Kansas. The language was confusing, where people didn't know, wait, am I supposed to vote yes if I want abortion or no if I want abortion? I will say I read it. It's a little confusing. I think ballot language is generally in the lean of obfuscation. So I can see how you would have an issue with it if you didn't support it.
What do you think? Are Democrats trying to sneak something by? Are Republicans trying to mislead voters? What's going on here?
Well, that would be a misconception to think this is just Democrats pushing the abortion language. It's Democrats, women, Republicans, independents. This goes across party lines. It's the Republicans who want to continue to play games with it. And Amy's right. That's exactly what we're seeing, is a little political gamesmanship from the Secretary of State. That's his prerogative to do that. The courts are going to set him straight, and the voters are going to have a say on this, and they are overwhelmingly going to approve abortion in Missouri.
We got another big issue coming up on the ballots in November, maybe. 2 Missouri residents trying to derail this one. They filed suit to stop the sports betting referendum from hitting the ballot. A legalization proposal is supposed to go before voters in November, but the suit claims the methodology used to certify the signatures to put the issue on the ballot is flawed, and there aren't enough signatures from the 1st Congressional District, which is St. Louis, where the Cardinals play. And Michael, Cardinals team president Bill DeWitt III says the suit is completely without merit. Should this issue be on the November ballot?
It will be on the November ballot. I think Bill DeWitt's statement about this lawsuit is spot on. Andy, one of the problems we have right now in Missouri is we have a legislature that's not dealing with the issues that citizens want them to tackle. As a result, they're going to the ballot and putting this language on themselves. And rather than the muddiness of politics being worked out in Jefferson City, it's being worked out at the ballot box. And I suspect here what we ultimately are watching is not 2 citizens alone, but a lot of big corporate interests who also want to be in the gaming space who are funding this lawsuit. That's the type of stuff that doesn't happen if a legislature is doing its job.
Should we be deciding this in Jefferson City? Should we decide it at the ballot box, or should we decide it in a courtroom?
I think it's going to be decided in November. I mean, I think a judge would be loath to take away the vote of the people. When you look at the numbers, it can be confusing the way the language is written, but district by district, they got the 8% in at least 6 of the 8 districts. And it is weird to me who's bringing this lawsuit. Who's behind these 2 people bringing the lawsuit? Because, I mean, when you have this much money involved, you're talking about billions of dollars across the country in sports wagering. I only wish you could have placed some money on this ballot, because this whole saga about sports betting in Missouri has been insane.
Think it's competing casino interests?
Probably.
Really behind this?
I mean, who knows? Well, eventually they will have to disclose who they are, but I don't think it's going to be the most pristine of folks who are challenging.
It's not
this.
Ethel down the street going, "Oh, I couldn't help but notice these numbers seem odd." Yeah, it's not Ethel.
An independent candidate for the United States Senate from Missouri is putting political enemies next to each other at Cardinals and Royals baseball games to prove a point.
They walked away knowing, hey, this person thinks about politics completely differently from me, but we can still be friends. And that's exactly what we're out to prove.
He calls it the United Seats of America. In his campaign, Jared Young recruited volunteers, Democrat and Republican, to sit next to each other behind home plate at a Cardinals game and a Royals game. He's running as an independent against Republican incumbent Josh Hawley and Democrat Lucas Kuntz. Those 2 have been very hostile toward each other. Young has formed what he calls the Better Party to recruit candidates focused on issues instead of tearing down opponents. He's releasing a mini documentary about United Seats of America in the coming days, Amy.
I mean,
like this?
I love it. It's pie in the sky. I don't think it's going to change anything, but I do think it's absolutely true. When we have just this tense and vitriolic political climate where people hate, dehumanize, even demonize the other side, especially the very online political people. You're not even talking to your opponents as humans anymore. People online are talking about civil war. No, we're not going to have civil war. Go to a baseball game. You guys both have soccer practice. You both like to get coffee in the morning. Will it make a big difference? I don't know, but I like it.
Voters always claim they want things like this, but then when it comes time to vote, they vote for the two warriors.
Well, I hope what they are voted like is Hancock and Kelley, because I think we kind of are emblematic of what he's talking about.
Absolutely.
You can disagree, but still have harsh policy differences, but be able to be disagreeable. I think at the end of the day, what Mr. Young is he's a content creator who's trying to get attention for a noble cause and for himself, and I think he's done that. He's not going to be a factor in this election, and I wish him well in his online life.
Up next on Hancock and Kelley, Donald Trump heads to the border as the stars come out for Kamala Harris at the Democratic National Convention in Chicago.